So to all the naysayers here who actually say there are not enough women out there, qualified women that we can have on the panel, look at this. It is possible. Maybe some women are not as visible and are not the first number marked in the phone of a male CEO, but they're there. So if you have the opportunity to suggest women, or if you have colleagues who are looking to find female talent but don't find them, you can send them to WeShape Tech. We're happy to help. We know over 1,000 very top-notch women, happy to provide your names. So we at WeShape Tech, as Melanie mentioned before, we want to provide more visibility to highly qualified women, to big boss ladies, because we believe that, or it is actually proven that, the exposure to female leaders reduces gender bias. And it's also proven that the exposure of female leaders inspires the audience, and we hope that you get inspired and also say, I also want to become the CEO. Go for it. So this is why we have 4 highly successful and renowned big boss ladies here on stage. They want to inspire you. Before we dive into the panel, I want to turn to you. I want to ask you a few questions on the state of diversity in your companies. So please raise your hand with yes. If you work at a company that has 50-50, male, female, at the top management or board. 4, 5, 6. Wow. We want to hear from you how your companies did it. Fantastic. Please raise your hand if you work for a company where there are less than 50% male, female at the top. The majority. And please raise your hand if there are more than 50% women at the top. Also, oh, good. We're, as Patrizia mentioned, we are on a movement. This is good. So back to our panelists. We are here because we want to learn from you about pillars of success. Being an engineer myself, I like to break things down, and I would like to understand the different building blocks a little bit better. So we'll talk now about 3 different topics: about performance and perception of performance, about power dynamics, and about the personal network. So let's start with the very first one. Performance and perception of performance. So before I started to work at Google, I asked a mentor what I should look at. And she said, don't focus on the network, don't focus on the industry, focus on performance. Performance is the only thing. Performance is key. So okay, I agree. Without performance, I wouldn't have been promoted twice in my 6 years at Google. This is good, but there are many people who do an as good job as me, but did not get promoted. So is performance really everything? I would like to ask Simone, there is a book called Die Fleißlüge, Why Women End Up in the Hamster Wheel and Men in the Board. What's your, being a consultant for all the top executives, what's your perception? Is focusing on performance a lie?
Thank you very much for the question, Petra. I think it's an important question to raise. I think the key lies always in the balance. Being a top performer, being very good at what you do and what you like to do is key. But on the other hand, or at the same time, visibility is key as well. It is visibility which gives you the platform to raise through in your career, and therefore networking is certainly also an important piece apart from just doing a great job.
So you say performance, but also networking. I'd like to turn to Claudia, because you mentioned when we spoke before here on stage that you focus on performance and that brought you to a certain level. So performance, can you explain a little bit more?
Well, For me, that's a given. So if you want to have a career, overperforming is kind of a must, I think. So you need to have that willingness, that ambition and perseverance to do more than you're asked to do. Otherwise, it's difficult to really go up if you're interested, right? To go up significantly in a hierarchy. But it's not enough. I don't think it's enough. For me, an eye-opener was when I moved to the CFO role in EMEA, and my boss in it was the year-end performance review, whatever it's called, and he asked me, Claudia, who are your promoters and who are your detractors in the EMEA executive team? And I couldn't answer the question because I never thought of, maybe because I'm not a political animal, really, but I never thought about the need to strike alliances, the need to find stakeholders who support my things, so my arguments or what have you, my initiatives. And I also didn't look at the word in terms of detractors. And I realized how important it is. I mean, that was for me really an eye-opener. Maybe this is the way big corporates work, only big corporates, and smaller companies don't. That can also be the case. But in any case, it's very important that when you have, when you want to go up, or simply when you want to get support on things that you want to move, when you want to have an impact, you need alliances, and the best way to find alliances is to have a network beyond what you're doing today, beyond your team. You need to make sure that, yes, you're good, you're more good than average, you're better than average, but then you also need to make sure that people know about that. If I think back my previous career in finance, before I became CFO, I think I was doing a really good job, but no one knew outside of my unit. So what benefit is that? At some point, you risk that you become, that you get a label and you're the super star in a certain team, you're the expert, you're the go-to person for that specific role or that specific question, but you will never get out of that. So in my view, yes, performance is important. Going back to your point, I think it's a must, but then you need also to network, you need to be known, you need to make sure that people know what you're doing.
Thank you so much. That leads me to my next question for you, Patrizia. So you're LinkedIn top voice, and Claudia just mentioned performance is absolutely key, but there needs to be much more. Can you tell us, how did you build up your public profile?
Yeah, I mean, I think it started 4 or 5 years ago, and I was always trying to performing, and trying to do really good reports. I even traveled to North Korea or to Iran and was reporting about like really severe issues, but somehow the media itself was the problem, and they've written a lot of bad stories or just sexist stories about me, not even mentioning my function. So they just were writing about the ex-hobby model does that or wants to do that. I was never modeling anyways, but they not even mention my function as journalist. They didn't say, of course, economist anyways. And then it started really, I was in this, I didn't want to be their victim, so I really started to fight and with my female lawyers, and they had to apologize for all these articles they've written, and they've supported by the chief editors, and this was not only one article, it was several. And so I really got a lot of support by very young media women, and I think there is really a new generation supporting each other and empower each other. It's completely different way of thinking, and I owe them so much because they really supported me. We stopped this shitstorm, so we changed it to a smart storm, and there have been magazines after this whole stories. There was even this tele magazine which said something like, oh, had my cover photo on the cover and said, be careful, smart. And then I was just asking on social media, was ever a cover like this published with a male face on it? And then it started, and then everybody on social media, even politicians, started to brand their portrait with like careful, smart. And so this was like really something. There's this dynamics in which lies in social media, and the cool thing is that you really find each other. You find each other with the same interest. You can follow each other. You can create content together and create events together, and it goes so much quicker. And I tell everybody, you have to become visible. And either way, I have a question. Is anybody already on sheknows.ch? Yeah, there are. No, because it goes live tomorrow and you have the chance to do it, because this is something really incredible going on right now, because the biggest alliance, female alliance in Switzerland, is now building and launching these platforms, sheknows.ch, and you will find all the experts. I mean, of course, the media women, the tech women all have their platforms, but it's really quite kind of difficult to find each other, and sheknows.ch is really for every topic. And if anybody tells you they can't find a woman, so just tell them there's sheknows.ch.
So you also just mentioned that you had those articles, and then you engaged your network, the younger crowd, that then sort of the spin changed.
A lot, maybe a small example, maybe, which is really showing that we get power by social media networks, digital networks. Because I was writing about Zalando, because they put as an aim 0% women on the management board. So they were even so ignorant or arrogant or whatever, or dumb to put that in their report. And of course, this went viral, especially in Germany, and they were like calling me, and I was like really afraid that they're suing me, and they were saying this is maybe not true, and this is not, this is really, you couldn't say that like this. And then the network said, look, Patrizia, if this happens and they sue you, we are gonna launch crowdfunding for your costs for the lawyers. And this is something really, I mean, it changes everything if you help each other and if you have this network.
Yeah, and your network even makes you stronger. I mean, if they would sue you, imagine the shitstorm that would start.
This even worse.
Talking about social media and the younger generation, Sunnie, you're very present on social media. To what degree is, in the context of performance, to what degree is social media important for you?
Well, I mean, I think it's important as an entrepreneur. I mean, for me, a lot of the engagement with media and social media came from, it's free. I mean, it's just simply the financial reality of starting up is you start at zero and you try to take whatever little bit you have to start with, and you max out whatever you can get out of it. So the cheapest way of doing marketing today is social media, and or talking to journalists and hoping that you're interesting enough so that they'll write about something you care about. And so the very first article I got, and the very sort of first engagements on social media that I did was related to startups and related to trying to that early stage startup I mentioned to you earlier, where I was in California. And that was incubated by Y Combinator. I mean, my job there, in part, was trying to figure out the business side and trying to figure out how would people ever hear about us. And so it was all driven by just understanding that if nobody hears about what you're doing, how are you ever going to find clients, find partners, find employees? Because most of the services where you need to pay to get reach, so a recruiting agency for new talent, it costs something, and it's just cheaper for me. So it started out of a need. It started out of not me wanting to put myself out there. It just started out of the simple fact that if I wanted to succeed in business and I wanted to be heard, I needed to be at a place where people were listening, or sometimes listening and oftentimes, putting out their own views on things, but at least you could engage. And I think what Patrizia said is right. I mean, you do figure out who is interested in what topics, you start up conversations. Also, I should say that in the US, like, I mean, I find it amazing that all of your faces are actually looking at us in the audience, but like what happens at conferences, like I remember going to Startup Bootcamp at MIT, and I remember like literally like 90% of people were just on their phones, and it's not that they weren't paying attention. There was a digital conversation and dialogue happening while people were speaking on stage. And so when I went to Swiss Economic Forum, I remember this, I was like part of this like 50-50 gender initiative because they only have 13% female participants. I think they're working on it. Anyways, and so I remember sitting in the audience and this guy next to me, probably twice my age, saying, "Are you a journalist?" Because I was used to consuming conferences this way. It's not like you just sit there, it's no, like you engage in a dialogue, like Simone just said this, you know what, I think that, and you'll tweet it out real time, hashtag it, and then like, you know, the other person over there is gonna be like, I totally agree, that's exactly what's going on, or like, you know, I have this other anecdote to add. By the end of the night, you have a digital conversation that happened, and then you also have the conversation that happened here, and they happen in parallel at the same time. And so I will, like, from the US, I'll have people who I met online first, which barely happens here. Like, it's changing, I agree, but it barely happened here. And so for me, this sort of was just a fun way of engaging. First it was a need, then it was a fun way of engaging, and now it's become, it's just become something where I realize that by sharing a narrative and a story, I can highlight things that are meaningful and I care about, and I can get people to engage with it. I had my birthday a few days ago, and I decided this year I didn't want to get any gifts from my friends. I just wanted them to donate to a cause I'm very passionate about, and I wanted to get a scholarship together for a future female entrepreneur in Kenya who needs 3,200 francs to do studies there in high school. And so I was like, look, I mean, we can do this together. And so the easiest way of getting a bunch of people to like just donate, you know, a few Swiss francs is by having your own platform and spreading the word. And suddenly, you know, within the shortest period of time, like I remember I was at $800 on the 2nd of June, and my employees remember me like being, oh my goodness, like we're never gonna manage. And then the 4th of June happened, my birthday, and like boom, we're like off to, you know, over $4,000 at this point. We're still running for a few days, but and we're now at this point trying to do a second scholarship. And the only reason I can do a second scholarship is because online I saw that a friend of mine is raising for the same NGO a scholarship too by cycling 1,000 kilometers to the Atlantic coast. I'm like, hey, you got extra money, I got extra money, let's do a second one together. And that just happens. And so I think that a lot of this social media just allows for a dialogue that previously wasn't able to happen in that way. And I think it's really sad if you don't want to participate in the dialogue, because participation is everything. So yeah, so in that spirit, I would encourage people to engage.
Nice said. And in that spirit, we will also have the most highly voted questions afterwards in the Q&A from Twitter. So if you have questions already now, just a quick reminder, start tweeting.
Yes.
I think for the performance and perception of performance, we probably all agree that performance is absolutely key, but there are lots of pillars built upon. Visibility is highly important, either because it's necessary or just because it helps you to get to where you want to go. With that, let's go to the second point, power dynamics. A coach told me once that it is super important, status is everything. It is super important that you, when you're at the conference, just stand right next to the sea levels. And I realize it has a huge impact on your career. So I would encourage every one of you, think about with whom do you want to speak and step up. Don't be shy to think, oh, with those people I can't talk. Sunnie, when we had lunch in order to prepare this panel, you said something so beautiful that I want to mention here. You mentioned that there was an event where you put up a slide with all the faces of people that opened a door for you. I think this is super beautiful. So what happened how did you manage that they opened a door? How did that happen? Did that happen spontaneously? Can you share?
Well, I mean, the event you reference is a conference that was about 3 perspectives on success. And the idea for me was to say that success is not about, we always make it a very individualistic thing. We like to put one person on the cover, not 10. But at the end of the day, really, behind every successful person I have ever met, they are at least 10, 20, 50 people in their life story who managed to help them get there where they were. Of course they had to perform, of course they had to be visible, of course they had to do all that they did, but also there were other people involved. And that's very true for me as well. And I think that, a lot of it is human chemistry. I think that we like to think that we can fake people into believing something about ourselves, but we really can't. People pick up on this quicker than you can finish the sentence. So, my advice, while, of course you need to understand with whom do you want to invest your time and with whom do you not. I also think it's just a lot about human chemistry, and it's a lot about, at least this is what it's been for me, there's an interesting book that I find very valuable by Adam Grant, and it talks about takers and givers, and it sort of looks at people who network, and it says, look, there's some people who just go out there and they give, then there are people who take a lot, and then there are people who do tit for tat. And the question he then tries to figure out is, who wins? So what should you be? And the interesting thing, to give you a short summary of it, is the givers. Because the givers end up at the bottom and on the top. And what this means is those who give and start out by giving, they tend to inspire others to eventually come and pay it back. And this is what I have seen a lot happen. So actually for me it was more about first figuring out not what do I want, but more what can I add? Like what can I contribute? Where can I make a difference? I remember being in Silicon Valley, someone came up to me at a networking event and was like, hi, I'm da-da-da, how can I help? And I'm like, I don't even know your name or what you do. But that attitude really shaped me, because I actually oftentimes copy this now. And I'm like, well, how can I help? How can I contribute? Someone will figure out how to pay you back someday. Most people have an innate sense of fairness. The reason why givers also end up in the bottom with Adam Grant's study, he's a Wharton professor, is that some people can't set boundaries. So there is such a thing as you need to take care of yourself too. And if you stop taking care of yourself to the point where you're just always giving to others, then it starts to become challenging. But I think for most of us, and especially in this country, I dare say, it would be incredibly wonderful if we would show up more and ask not what can I get, but what can I give?
The power of giving. Thank you so much. Let's take that as a huge advice, maybe as one of the tasks. So whom can you give something when you go home tonight? Claudia, when we had a conversation, you mentioned that you also had sponsors in life. So how did you discover them, or what doors, if you stay with this analogy, did they open for you?
I think I was very lucky in a way. If I think of people I met during my career, many of them actually happened to have been my bosses. I was very, very fortunate that I had a good connection with them, both on a personal and professional side, and they kind of understood what I guess to follow up on what Sunnie said, my contribution to it could have been. So they've seen more probably than what I was doing or contributing in that particular moment, but they could see what I could have developed into. And I could name at least 4 or 5 of them that helped me out, probably because they just took the chance and they thought, okay, she might be up for something, and why don't I help? One in particular, he was my boss in one of my first jobs, and he told me something fairly early in our relationship, that he would like someone who works for him to become his boss later on. And I think that's a very humble, and if it's an authentic statement, I think it's super powerful, because it gives you the impression of It reflects someone who's really there to grow talent as well, to nurture others, and is not just fixed on himself, his own career, and his own, I guess, path to glory. So that I was very fortunate to find a few of them. I think it's up to you as well to go and discover the mentors of the sponsors that you find. Don't be afraid if it doesn't work. Many companies do have formal mentorship or sponsorship programs. If it doesn't work, cut it. There's nothing bad with that. I mean, if you don't function, if it doesn't work with your mentor or your sponsor, you rather finish, remain friends and part ways, and go and find someone else who can help you more on the personal side, because I think it's important to have some feeling of getting close as well, so the person can really help you out. I think sometimes physical proximity helps. So I've been mentoring someone, for instance, who is based in Australia. She does a great job, but it was really difficult for me to have an impact on her life. We frequently spoke over the phone. She was in a career phase where she wanted to change something, but I just wasn't there in the fashion that I would have loved to be. So I think find someone who knows you well, find someone who can have an impact, whom you trust, and have that kind of very, very open relationship. I think that can be a very powerful mean to boost your career, actually.
Mm-hmm. And following up quickly, the one sponsor, he was your manager. But if it's not your manager, like, how do you discover a sponsor?
Well, there are some formal processes to do that, and otherwise I would really recommend that you go to someone whom you've been dealing with maybe in the past, that gave you that sense of trust, someone who might have been your former boss, or not even a boss. I mean, it can be someone that you've seen in, I don't know, meetings, events, or any kind of conversation, and you think you admire for something. I don't know if it applies to everyone, but for me it's always important to feel like I'm learning something from a leader. I respect someone, I trust someone if I have a sense of having someone in front of me who knows more than I do, and it can be knowing in terms of content, but more likely than that, actually in form of leadership. So I'm always seeking for people I can learn from. If you have the same attitude, just go and ask. I'm not sure if every company is as the companies that I've been working for, but generally people tend to really be very, very open to mentorships and sponsorships. Don't forget as well that most companies are really out in search for talent, and groups like this are actually, well, Simone can probably mention, she knows better than I do, but there is, to a large extent, actually, a war for talent nowadays. So companies are really interested to get to know people who have the background that many of you have, I guess, in this room. So the doors are mostly open. People don't bite. Just be courageous and take the opportunity and ask.
Mm-hmm. You just built a great segue to my next question that actually goes to Simone, which is about the war of talent. I would like to understand from you, if you look for top talent, how, social media might be something, how do you find them?
So it's very easy to find a female talent, and to the point that was made before, whenever someone tells you there is no female talent out there, prove them wrong. It's not an issue. So how do we look for talent? We at Egon Zehnder, we always do a very broad search. So we obviously have our database, which has grown globally over the past 50 plus years. In addition to that, we always also look on publicly available sources. So LinkedIn obviously is an important source for us, but also for our competitors. And then we also speak a lot with people in the market whom we trust, whom we can source and ask for talent they recognize in the market.
So who would that be, for instance, like the sources of trust?
So like the sources of trust are people I have in my own network, whom I would talk to and say, listen, I'm looking for a person with that and that background and this experience, would you have some names that you could share with me? And so therefore it is our ambition to have a very broad view of the talent that is out there in the market.
Mm-hmm. So one of the pieces that you just mentioned is having an up-to-date and very well looking LinkedIn profile, because that might be one of the resources that
absolutely. So
Simone
LinkedIn
might
profile
look into.
is certainly important to have. Yes.
Yes. And so there might be a few audience members out there, Patrizia, that run their own company or just started. They're at the very beginning of their own journey to build up their own company and their own brand. You as a journalist, you're expert as to networks, as to approach people. What is it that you would recommend to them with regards to networking?
Do it as Sunnie did it. No, she's really a great example there, and you just have to follow her. She really does it amazingly. And I'm of course also very fan to be on social networks, but as can you imagine that a lot of small and middle-sized companies, they don't have this mentoring and sponsors. This works very well with Google and Swiss Re. This is very professional at the big corporates, but a lot of people don't have it. We don't have it in-house either. So I really suggest that you take control yourself and make yourself visible and find your sponsors and mentors. A few weeks ago, I hosted an event with networking queen, Tishan Onaran from Germany, and she really said, they're stalking people, and just try to connect someone, to engage and to find your mentors. And there are also people or women approaching me via social media. They want to be that I'm becoming their sponsor or mentor, and I'm sure with Sunnie it happens a lot. So I think just again, courage and try. And Tishan also said she often feels like a stalker. But when Elon Musk was answering one of her tweets, this is happening. So you can really connect to the people via social media, via your content, your answers and opinions, I'm sure.
So put yourself out there and have courage.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's move to our third piece, the personal setup of success, your personal network and the people that surround you. And just commenting on what you mentioned, I see already some people going down and tweeting. We hope we have lots of questions that you might ask our high caliber women that we have on this panel. So last point with regards to career before we go to the Q&A. When I was at ETH, I was at a dinner for a scholarship program, and the president gave a speech. She mentioned 7 P's for success. I'm afraid I don't remember the 6 first P's, but I remember the very last one, which was partner choice. And from my personal experience, I can say that my fiancé is a great supporter. He stands behind me when I'm down. He supports me. He backs me up. So I can feel how this partner choice can have a big impact. Question for you, maybe, Claudia. How much would you say does your partner influence your career?
A lot. I think, he's supporting me in every step. He's been supporting me in the past. I've been learning a lot from him. But also, you have those days at work where everything is just shit happens all the time, and everything is negative, and you don't know how to turn things. And then you go home and you have that kind of protected environment where you know that someone is there and can help you to calm down and be yourself. That's for the well-being, and I think nowadays it becomes more and more important because we are all taken by the pace of being everywhere, accessible all the time, so always under pressure. It's so important that you take your time out, you sleep well, you have your family time, you have your time for your hobbies. Don't make any compromise on that. So having a partner that takes you down after those shitty days, those stressful days, those days where you think nothing is going well, that's super important. But it's also super important to have someone that will support you if you make certain choices. In our case, at some point it became clear that I was probably going to be the one who will have the most important career maybe, which was fully okay for him. And I don't think is very common. I mean, it's still something that it happens. I mean, there are men that support more and more than women, but it's not obvious for everyone. I'm very lucky to have a partner who told me, if we need to travel, we need to move to other places for your career, I will come with you. He's having his own job, of course, and things that he's doing, a lot of them. His football club, which is maybe even more important, but he would give up all of that because he knows that it's a decision that we met together, and he's ready to move with me if it becomes again a topic. So to your question, how important is it? It's crucial. I think for your mental well-being, for your resilience, your personal resilience, but also in terms of logical everyday support and for the big choices is really important.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's key because he gives you the support and holds your back free. Yeah. Patrizia, for you, some women might wonder, so career, family, can you have it all? You have a family, you have a very successful career. How do you handle it?
I just have to start with a few really frustrating research results, because it shows clearly that women in top positions, they either have no children, or they have a partner which is staying at home full time, or they're coming from really wealthy environments and upbringings, and they have the money to have private personal and nannies and help. And so this is really the three main backgrounds for women in top positions. I'm maybe another exception because my mother, we would think in chaos without her. She basically lives with us Monday till Thursday, so approximately, and we wouldn't manage it without her. So I owe her everything that I can work, because I love my job and I want to work. I work like every weekend because 150%. I work more than my husband, but it's the truth. I wouldn't know how to finance like 3 children and all with nannies, and this flexible and organizational, financial. This is just not possible today in the system we have in Switzerland, and it's the most expensive childcare system that we have worldwide. And it's just, I think it's embarrassing that we're one of the richest countries in the world, and we just dedicate the lowest percentage of the GDP for early childhood upbringing and education. So so we really have to vote and to vote for the right politicians next September. Yeah, that would be my call.
Thank you so much. Simone, when you see top executives, female top executives, do you see, can they have it all? Can they have family and career?
I was actually very surprised to see many top female executives who have children. Often they do have a husband or spouse who stays at home or has more flexibility in the career to support the family. And yes, most of them also have the financial abilities to have nannies and that daycare. But I must say, I don't have children. I wouldn't know where to find the energy to do 70 hours weeks and plus raising children. So whenever I hear women like Patrizia sharing how they juggle everything, I'm just appalled by the energy and the dedication.
It's my mother.
Yep.
You have to be honest. Yeah, she really. So I'm a lucky one here, but we really have to be honest. I think everybody, yeah. Also with your job, how would you do it otherwise?
And yes, I think you can have it all, but just be very organized, and as Claudia also mentioned beforehand, equality actually starts at home.
So thank you all very much for being part of this panel.